As a builder, as a construction owner, built many buildings, commercial, residential. I mean, if you love socialism and you love communism, this bill's for you. If you love bigger government, if you love the unions, if you love putting small business out of business, you love this job. You love this bill. Let me give you an example. 3 weeks ago in my district, 10 miles from my home, one of my good friends who's a realtor had me come and sit with a company that was going to expand. They had a contract for 18 acres and they were going to expand their fabrication company, build a new building. They called me up, I sat with them and a realtor. 2 days before the closing, they pulled out because of this bill. Specifically because of this bill, but what it was going to do to their company. They're not expanding anymore. They're looking to leave the state. So just on the construction of the new building alone on 18 acres just cost 140 jobs. 140 jobs not happening because of this bill. Now the amendment on this does nothing. This isn't going to create any jobs. This amendment, because the schools that are getting hurt, the businesses that are flying because of the original bill, so this amendment is whitewash. I was at a breakfast less than 2 weeks ago for town, highway workers, superintendents, the thruway people that build on the thruways, the major companies. Over 400 people were at this breakfast. And their number one concern, even though this bill was passed, was rescind it, please. Don't vote for the chapter amendment. Stand on your feet and don't go with this. Fight this. This is killing us. Not just us on highway construction or new builds. It's killing school districts. It's killing small businesses. A lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle from my Western New York were there. They heard it. So what happens here, give a real life example. Most truck drivers in our area make $30 to $35, and that's a good wage. That's a good wage. Now, if you take, that's a dump truck, a normal 10-wheel. If you go from Erie County over to Cat County, now you've got a logistics nightmare. Because now you have to pay that gentleman who drove over the county line the prevailing wage, which now can jump to $120 an hour. Big deal? Maybe, maybe not for some, but for small business it's a huge deal. But also the nightmare is, how do you track this? Because it's going to be, are you on 1 hour of time, or is their whole day have to be paid because they crossed that county line for 1 hour? It's a logistical, clerical nightmare for these businesses. And it's putting people out of business. And I just told you just one example that I was just personally involved with. This legislation, one of the claims made was that this was going to be fiscally responsible, and it's not. It's fiscally reckless. It claims that the state, they don't have any fiscal implications on this, but this legislation would clearly result in significant cost increases for all affected construction projects and would have a chilling effect on economic development in New York State, resulting in fewer jobs. And I didn't write that. The people who lost those jobs wrote that because they're getting ready to move out of New York State, another job killer. It attacks small business. And before we talk about small business, I was the ranker, Madam Speaker, on Small Business Committee for 10 years. The only bill in 10 years, you know what are the most number of meetings that we had on small business in 10 years? 1 a year. And it was always to do a study on MWBE, which we never got the results of anyway. We never did one thing on the Small Business Committee to help hinder anybody in small business. None of it, because this state did not care about small business, because this state just overlooked small business, because the governor or whoever it was never gave small business the time of day. And that's why you've seen for the last 30 years, on average, Over 250,000 people a year leave this state, and in the last 5 years, you're looking at over 400 to 450,000 a year. They're moving out of here in droves because they can't afford it. And this bill and this amendment does nothing. What we needed to do was go back and just take this whole bill out of existence. But again, if you don't like small business, this bill's great. If you like socialism and you like bigger government, fantastic. If you think this is fair for the worker, tell me how 140 jobs being lost was fair to those workers that will never get that job. And that's just one project in my district. And there's more, because the people who have been looking at this, who actually do this work and actually have to deal with it, are citing so many different places and reasons why this doesn't work. What happens, you've got this amendment, and all this amendment is, Madam Speaker, it's like making a hot diaper sandwich and spraying a little Lysol on it. It does nothing. I'm urging all my colleagues to vote no on this because it's an affront to small business of something that I was a small businessman for over 35 years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.